Welcome back to Work in Progress. My name is Asantua, and we are also here with Jeffrey today. Say hello to the people, kind sir.
Hello to the people.
And today we're going to be talking about a few things, local and international. I think we should start with what we were talking about the. Oh, you want to start with that? We're going to start on an international level, talking about the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Okay, proceed, Jeffrey. You want to talk about this? Let's talk about it.
Well, it was just interesting.
An old woman dying was interesting.
Okay. Well,
Do tell.
the reaction to was interesting. I'm not British, and but I kind of understand. That's a part of their identity and symbology and whatnot. And I watched the funeral. It was pretty impressive. I mean,
it was long.
It was long. It was. I don't think any other nation could have pulled off such a elaborate.
It was their loyalty to their lady.
Yeah.
Whole 10 days.
But I was also watching Russell Brand, who is a British comedian, and his take on it. And so he had a pretty balanced take on it. And because he's like, he grew up, there was no time that he didn't know or that the Queen wasn't in or a part of his life in that sense. And for a lot of people took on like a grandmotherly role. And of course, again, it's like the national identity and blah, blah, blah. But then it also brought up some interesting issues. For instance, I was listening to a couple of Jamaican officials and some of the Commonwealth who were kind of like, weren't necessarily sad about it, and brought up their independence and a lot of these Commonwealth, the territories that
Commonwealth. That's another word for? What is that a synonym?
Colonies.
Of? Okay.
We're going to break away from Britain, and the royal family has said pretty much slavery was bad, and not much else. People were looking for reparations and things of this nature. I mean, one of the symbols on the I think one of the royal standards is a lion. There are no lions in England.
Unless it's at a zoo.
Yes. Meaning that a lot of Britain was built on the backs of enslaved people, just like the United States. And so we should question these systems, is what it is what's interesting about it. And even under this past Queen Elizabeth II, I believe, it came to my attention that there was actually a genocide in Kenya. There was actually concentration camps, but the British had formed 100,000 people murdered. These are things that just somehow escape history. When brown people are murdered, it's just not like stamped into the history books, where it's known. And I think that does a detriment, because when people react to things like this, other people's response who don't know this historical side get offended, or why are they like that, and blah blah blah. And it's not necessary, because they don't know the history. If you know history, you can better understand the world, and that's the point of knowing history. It's not to blame, but it's to know where people stand and where you stand and where people's point of views come from.
I think another thing that, and I always say this, now we are in the day and age of where technology is so in the forefront, and basically this whole thing happened very much online. I remember I was at work when we found out. Some people were like, I had an Irish colleague, and this is what I was saying. So before this conversation, I did not know that Irish people did not speak English before Britain came in and tried to take over. And I was so shocked because we were having this conversation about how I learned like the term for Gaelic and Irish and their languages, and he was like, "Oh yeah, before they came in," because I was like, "What is the whole beef between you guys? I don't quite know." He was like, "Well, we are Protestants, they're Catholic, and this and that." He was like, "Yeah, we didn't even speak English before they came," and I was like, "What?" I was really shocked because, of course, we don't learn this much, at least in the U.S. history. We don't learn these intricacies because I knew they had some beef. They didn't like each other from, I would say, from certain documentaries I've seen. And he was like, "Yeah, we didn't speak English for that." I was like, "Wow, okay." And he was like, "No, I'm not sad. She's gone. We were just having this discussion. Some people thought it was like they were sad and they were like, oh my God, so the world is changing." I was like, she was like 92, 96.
Yeah, 96 or something.
I mean, there was a reason.
The historical context, yeah.
So I mean, like, not in a she deserved to die, but I'm like, it's not that big of a surprise to me that this woman is dead. And I would also like to state, my name is Asantua. I'm literally named after the first Ghanaian warrior, female warrior, who tried to drive the British out of their country. So my name is connected to them trying to colonize people. And I don't feel this sense of I don't feel this sense of sadness in that for British history, I would say, well, a chapter is closing with this woman's death, but also in British history, they tried to colonize my home country. They had a hand in slavery. The things that they still have in their possessions are actual. They mean things to the countries that are their former colonies. Because I feel like the word Commonwealth is another thing that is trying to distance itself from what it actually is.
That's true. Words
have power.
Words have power.
And if you say it like that, people, oh, well, that's not nice. I'm like, slavery is not a nice thing. The things that countries like Britain and France did are not nice things. And you just have to say them for what they are. I think it's hard to say. No one wants to hear it. No one wants to talk about it, but it's true.
Language is very important. I learned that from George Carlin, who had an interesting, brilliant comic, of course, but his take on the use of language, especially with politicians and, when they talked about the war, the First World War, when soldiers came home, they had shell shock, and now they call it battle fatigue. Which Carlin says sounds like your car. Sounds like something's wrong with your car. It's not shell shock, which is kind of like, has power to the meaning, and also politicians who always never make decisions. They're forming a committee to look into the problem, and then we will.
Then they'll absolve themselves of any wrongdoing, any responsibility.
Right.
They come up with terms like battle fatigue.
Yes.
You know what would sound so bad if you just heard someone say, you'd be like, how could they do that? Yeah, my husband came back from the war and he's fucked up. Yeah. Like, no one want to hear. They're like, wow, how did that happen? Really?
Yeah.
Not battle fatigue. Here's battle fatigue. That also sounds stupid. That sounds like you were beat up in a high school football game.
But now, so what I was thinking was interesting, relating back to the Queen and then the monarchy, was how we, in the United States, the identity was, we don't want a monarch. We don't want, but we did start a class system. There were landowners who were rich and there was peasants who were not. And if you go back into that history, and when America was pretty much all white, it was still kind of hierarchy. There was those who worked the land and those who owned the land. And they were the lords, still kind of that identity left over from British monarchy. And in my opinion, some ways, this is the same thing today, that people seem to defer to a ruling class, which is against what democracy is. There's not supposed to be a ruling class. Everybody's supposed to have a voice. It's not the case. And like we talk about capitalism, we talk about these words, but these words are not true to what they're supposed to be. We have crony capitalism, which is a capitalism that takes from the people and gives to businesses and continues a hierarchical system of those who have more than they need and those who don't have enough. And as an Icelandic citizen and American citizen, I find it interesting that this country of 300,000 people seems to have that hierarchical system, as small as it is. And as you throw a stone and you hit a cousin or somebody you know, which makes it all the more strange to me why that is and why that continues to be. Does that symbolize this thing that human beings have about a ruling class and everybody else? It seems to me that people think if you have money, you're somehow smarter or better. And as we can see with maybe like a Trump, it's not necessarily the case. And then there's systems of hereditary things. You know, you inherit wealth. Being African American, that has been in the United States systematically so that you could not inherit anything as far as land or whatever it was, you know.
Did you hear about the family that got their beach back in California?
Yes.
How long that took?
But historically, people don't understand that. And then they say, well, these people just don't work hard enough. And they don't know any historical context to any of it. So history, education is important. But a lot of people do not, you know, we've come to, in my opinion, this Instagram, Facebook way of learning things. It's like these little snippets, it doesn't give you full context of anything. And so you can't have rational, reasonable discussions about much of anything. You have parties that break down into one side or the other without any nuanced discussion. And really, it drives me crazy because I didn't grow up just instantly taking a side unless it was like life or death. I mean, not everything in this world is black and white. There's a lot of gray. And in order to have any solutions, you have to come to it. For instance, I'll give you an example, and then we'll go on. Trump in the United States. Now, what many don't understand is that a lot of people who voted for Trump voted for Obama previously. Obama was 2 terms in office. And when he got into office, a lot of what he promised, he didn't do. And it seems that he fell back on the same old, the status quo. And people, black, white, weren't cool with that because they wanted change, which is what his slogan was. And not much changed. Obama deported more people than Trump. Joe Biden at this point, I think, is close, except the only difference is he didn't separate families. They didn't separate families. That was just an extra cruel step that Trump threw in. But the amount of people who were deported from the United States was higher under Obama. And Obama also bombed more countries than George Bush. So you have to take the good and the bad or all these things into context and understand why things are the way they are. So people break down, they're like, oh, we hate anybody who voted for Trump, blah, blah, blah. And I understand where you're coming from. Trust me, I understand. I mean, I didn't vote for him. I wouldn't have voted for him. But there was a reason. You know, there was a reason. And in this day and age where economics are in play, everybody's feeling inflation and all these things, there's certain things in history that always seems to come back. And there's a resentment. There's a backlash against immigration, against foreigners. It's the same old thing. And it's always, it always seems to have to be that way because we have this hierarchical system. And when the rich who are ruling and making the policies and they have their friends in the government and they're making the rules and nobody's talking to them, but they're focused on the wrong thing, things continue as they are. It's always the same. Just look back in history, see what was going on at the time, these major changes in the economy or depression, all this stuff. Same stuff always seems to come down to be. We have this hierarchical system. And until people break out of that, you know, and it's uncomfortable because what are you going to do? You know, it's something new. You know, everybody has a voice. Oh, that's something new. It has to be done, I think, because I don't know how long, you know, the mass of people are going to, you know, allow themselves to be duped and robbed, literally robbed, wages and everything else from a small group that has more, and they have enough. No one can argue that. I don't think you can argue that. You know, and then you have people who are struggling, like day to day. Like if one thing happens bad to them, they're done. They're now they have to go on welfare. They have to do something because they have an accident or something unforeseen happened. This is like insanity to me. So, what do you think on that terms? Do you agree that we have this kind of hierarchical system? Might not be a king with a crown, but it's you know, some CEO who thinks he's God's gift, and like he makes more than a doctor will make in his lifetime.
Well, I think, of course, we have a hierarchy, but I also feel it's because, like you said, people are being duped. I think it's the biggest part is mental. And like you said at the beginning, that I'm always going to say something about when white people go to colonize a place, they're never the majority. Whenever they go, they always have to take out part of the population because they're never going to be the majority when they go. Like when you said in America, when the white, they were never the majority. Because I always think we have to remember that there were Native American people there when they came. So before they brought at least my ancestors there. I don't know where your people are from, Jeffrey. I won't make that assumption. I think they're never the majority, and that's the reason why this continues to happen, because even during slavery, there were more slaves than white people, but you have a hold over the mind.
Yeah.
And this hold is so strong that, like you and I say, how do you not see that you could just overpower this person, or you can shut down the system? There's 250,000 of you and 300 super rich people. How can you not see that? It's the mind. And I also think that's a part of keeping people so busy, so overworked. That's a part of it. You're always trying to make ends meet, going from paycheck to paycheck, working 1-2 jobs. It's at least in America. Here it might be a bit different. I think this is what also keeps people down here, because you're always scrambling for it's not just about, I think, new phones, new sneakers, new shoes. It's also about the basics. This is why you have all these programs, WIC. At least in New York, like my mom was on WIC, Women, Infant, Children is called this program. So you can have milk, cereal for your children. You're always trying to put these pieces together just to make things like this when you get the next paycheck. And I think that's a part of that hierarchy. It's not just super poor people, middle class, rich. There's always that fluctuation. Like you said, you're one car accident away from being down there. You're one broken arm away from being back down.
Yeah, I feel it's like a control mechanism.
And it's supposed to be. I think it's not, people don't understand. I don't think this is like an accident. You don't break your arm and go into debt and it's like, oh, wow, that's so crazy that this happened to you. And it's so unique to you that you broke your arm and you had to pay $3,000 to just to go to the hospital. And then they're going to charge you for a Band-Aid and plaster and the water they use. This is systematic. It's not a freak accident.
I believe everything. I agree with everything you said. And I think a lot of this is unfortunate because it's sort of with the economic system the way it is, it's sort of baked in. People don't have time to investigate a lot of things. They're too busy trying to survive. And I think it's by design. Like when people protest, like people didn't protest in the United States. It's not a thing they do. And when they do, then something's really effed up because they're usually pretty comfortable. Like you're not going out there unless something is wrong. And which would make you think to the ruling class, stop being such jerks about things and just understand there needs to be a certain balance. Things are way out of balance. And if things are more imbalanced, everybody's cool. Life is a little better for everyone from top to bottom. But, I think we've gone to an insanity. And like I said before, if you told me when I was younger that 3 of the richest businessmen would be able to build rockets to go to space for fun.
They would race to build rocket ships at that race.
Yeah, and everybody's like, oh, this is great. It's like, okay, there's people starving in our country. We don't have Our roads are falling
That's
apart.
what makes us the greatest.
I'm talking
that's
about
what makes us the greatest country in the world, because you're choosing to starve to death because you are not working hard enough to get yourself out of poverty. Why can't you see that?
And that's another thing. Working hard enough to get yourself out of poverty. Now, in the United States, you're supposed to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
But in the 70s, or I think it was the 80s, the government decided to, instead of giving loans themselves, which were really low interest rate loans, they farmed it out to the banks, which of course charged you for every drop of ink, every piece of paper, and everything else, and added on their own fees to make getting a loan an insanity. And of course, college super expensive. Mm-hmm. So people go in thinking, oh, I'm going to get a better job, blah, 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 go to college, and they come out saddled with debt. Now, it's a setup. And then you say, oh, well, you're just not working hard enough. That's such a BS argument. It's a distraction. And if you are not educated on what the systems are, mm-hmm. you fall into supporting those systems, which is the point, in my opinion. The United States is definitely following this dumb everybody down. I mean, just look at some of the politicians. Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about Jewish space lasers. Are you kidding me? Jewish space lasers. This actually came out of the mouth of a United States congressperson who was elected. So if you're telling me, oh, gee, Jeff, what are you talking about? Education. Yes, people are getting stupid, because if you elect somebody like that, come on. And now Trump's roosters are coming home, and we see that he's gotten away with tons of financial crimes. They finally bought something against him, saying he overvalued most of his assets. But, I worry, because I don't think people love, it's easy to be on one side and you're the bad guy and you're the da. And it takes a little more restraint and a little more strength to let someone speak and then intelligently find a thing. Now, that being said, if the thing that comes out of your mouth is all immigrants, all women, all black people, all white people, I cannot continue on that conversation, because, like I said, life is not black and white. There's a lot of gray. And if your stance automatically is that someone is something, it shows me that you don't have the intelligence to understand life. There is no all. For instance, there's a movie that came out. I can't remember the name. It's like an African Queen. I really look forward to this movie until someone brought up to me that it was The Woman King.
The Woman King.
And it was supposed to be an empowerment, and it was about that. I forget what country we're talking about.
The Woman King is the Damani Kingdom. I think
the tribe, right?
Yeah.
And that tribe,
they're on the west coast.
They're on the west coast
of Africa,
which was a lot of the slave trade.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they did not happen to mention that tribe,
they participated in chattel
You're
slavery.
Damn right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an important part, to mention because, some white people use it as kind of to defer responsibility of the slave trade, but which I think is total BS. It's like, because something is wrong and somebody else did it, it means overlook it. No, it's stupid. But it also, you should not dismiss when it's brought up, because it's facts. And you cannot have a reasonable argument about anything without truth. So, and I think, evil does not have a particular group associated with it. But you see things in like, for instance, the Holocaust. 6 million Jews. Okay. No one talks about Stalin because he killed way more people, even after World War II, which is why Germans would go to the Americans to give themselves up. Historically, people don't know that and understand that, but it's an important thing to understand, not to diminish the Holocaust of the Jews at all, but to understand the world. and to understand that, you know, evil can come up in many different forms in many different places. But if we got into a big subject, but everything is connected. Everything is connected. When we have these economic inequalities, what I am on the lookout for is the blaming of those who have no power and those who sit in the middle class. It's the silence of good people that allow these things to happen. And when the majority of those good people are uneducated and don't know, they go along with whoever is in charge and telling them that's what the problem is. You know, it seems, back to the economy. I came here in 2002, and I was instantly told, "Þú ekki tala íslensku, þú ekki skrifa íslensku, you might as well just go back on the plane, go home," which was interesting greeting. Welcome to Iceland, because I came here because my wife, my ex-wife, thought this would be a great place to come, and it is a great place. Especially, I'm very happy to have raised my kids in Iceland. I did not worry about my children in Iceland. No, I didn't worry about them getting shot at school, but I did worry about the mental impact of, in general, I feel, as small as this country is, why do we isolate ourselves? I was told to learn Icelandic, and I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm going to learn Icelandic. The opportunity I get to talk Icelandic is few, because most of the native population I run into, the majority, not all, but the majority, refuse to talk. They don't want to talk. There's no small talk. So if I'm really to get involved and immersed in the language, let's bring that up, because, you know, I don't have the opportunity. Nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to say. And then if I do, it's and then it's ensku. Then it's English. So
no, you understand me. The thing is, you have to put in effort if you want people to. Because I mean, I deal with the same thing. People come into my job. Oh, kontain, do you speak Icelandic? And I'm like, at this point, you've pissed me off. Like, I don't want to speak to you in English. They understand. Personally, I think they understand. It takes work for them to understand. Just like when you hear someone who speaks English with an accent, and they say different words, but you know what they mean.
Yes.
It takes some time to decipher, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
Don't say, no. That's not how you say it. This is what you're going to say. Unless I ask you for this help in improving my Icelandic skills, which sometimes I do. I'm like, okay, I know that's not right. How do I say that correctly?
Yes.
And I'm asking for your help to do it. They know what you're saying. What they don't want is they don't want to have to be the person to help you become fluent. They want you to come to them ready so they can just do their thing, talk, go about their day.
Now, my thing with this is fine because it's such a small country. But when you invite the world into your country at a clip of over 1 million a year, and your economy takes on a huge tourist bent, and the default language is English, why are we making such a big deal? Unless you're a doctor, a lawyer, or where the language is really going to be a detriment. Because my thing is I would be proud if I'm Icelandic and you already speak, most people already speak English. I have older people that I didn't expect to talk to me in English start talking to me in English about their history, about how come they speak English, which I think is fantastic. It's like, I come from America where everybody just speaks English. So if you automatically kind of grow up and you have 2 languages under your belt, that should be a source of pride. That should not be something as a detriment. That should be a source of pride and strength. It is the exact thing from the United States that I love about the United States, and I think, and I know has made the United States super strong, is the embrace of the other and the talents that they bring. And I mean, most businesses in the States when I grew up were foreigners.
I'm gonna say it,
foreigners who started most of the businesses around me. And a lot of them, you know, some of them had good English, some of them didn't have English, but I loved learning another language, learning another culture, and blah, blah, blah. And I knew that that was all contributing to the variety is the spice of life. I do not understand, and I can't. I didn't grow up that way. This vanilla lifestyle. This vanilla, I don't want to try. Look, you have your Rocky Road, you have your strawberry, you have it. I don't want to try anything. I'm good with vanilla, okay? And don't try to force that Rocky Road on me.
I think that goes back into the colonization thing we were talking about, with them Iceland was a colony of Denmark at some point. So I think when it comes to that, like, they just want to speak Icelandic. I'm in Iceland. I'm Icelandic. Why can't I speak Icelandic in my home country? I think this is the mindset, because I've heard it before. But I'm not saying this for everyone.
Okay.
I'm guessing I know for some people this is the thing. I shouldn't have to speak English.
Yes.
Which I'm like, I'm not going to knock you for it. But you have to understand, there's certain things, like when I go to the doctor sometimes and they're speaking to me in Icelandic, I'm like, I understood 3 words. And what I'm going to have to ask you is to say some of that in English, because this is important. It's about my health. I will not force you in your personal life to speak English. I don't care. Quite frankly, this is what you want to do. But I think this goes back to that colonization aspect of, why do I have to do something that I don't want to do for the benefit of this other person? You came here. I mean, I get that a lot. You came to Iceland, you should speak Icelandic.
But see, that's the thing. It's like, it's not just the benefit of myself or that individual. It benefits the whole country.
But how? They don't see it. How does it benefit the whole country?
If the whole country has a bunch of tourism coming in, then you have people who want to come here. They have a great time. Now they want to live here. We just had the thing with the girl creates content on YouTube, which is a tourist boom. Everything's beautiful, everything's great, and she wants to live here and she wants to promote her thing. And they're like, nah, we don't want you here. It's like, dude, you're a tourist economy. She's gonna, if anything, you want somebody like that here, because if you had somebody else who actually points out, hey, it's windy half the time, it's not really all that's cracked up to be.
I would say maybe you should tell them that.
Yeah, I should be like the opposite.
Save me a lot of
behind her, whatever. But it's interesting. Look, there are realities. And like I said, if Iceland was before all this tourism came, like, I walk down the street and I hear English all the time. I was in the hospital and there's English speaking doctors to me. I was saying what was wrong with me in Icelandic. He's like, look, can you just tell me what it is? Like, yeah, sure, great. And I think it's beautiful. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Most of the doctors I talk to have learned in the States. I have so much respect for that. My ex-wife, she went to the States and got an advanced degree. She didn't know how to speak the language, but she's fluent in English. And she comes back and she finds it a hard time to remember words, because she doesn't use English when she's in certain groups. And if you're in a management class in Iceland, you're not talking English. And I think that is the thing. It's like, there are no foreigners, or if they are, they're fluent. They must have been born here, gone to university, and they can speak it. So I don't want to put myself out. But there's a benefit to it, to understanding. How is there not a good benefit to go to sambandi, to good communication, with people and understanding people? And if you have a leg up, where I grew up knowing or learning multiple languages, to me, I just, I'm kind of envious, because in the States, our second language options in the States were kind of a joke. I learned a little bit of French when I grew up in school. I took Spanish for 4 years. No habla español. And I learned more Spanish when I worked in a restaurant in the States, because, again, I never thought this was a thing either. In most countries, all those non-skilled jobs, which is stupid because most jobs take a certain skill, but most non-skilled jobs were foreigners, and it's like, if the pandemic didn't teach us nothing in this country, when the pandemic hit, who was still out there going to work? All those unskilled workers, all those people you choose to overlook or are invisible to you. They're the ones who kept things going. They showed a lot of patriotism by, despite their own concerns about their health, still went out there and cleaned up the crap, and still went to work and got on the buses and did what they had to do. A lot of them did it because they had no other choice, had to make the money, but still they went and did it. And what appreciation is shown to that class here, the United States? Nothing. And you think that, human beings deserve a certain amount of dignity, and citizens in any country have to feel like they matter, like they contribute something, so they can be invested in that country and developing that country. I am an Icelandic citizen. My kids are Icelandic citizens. I feel I have obligation to do what I can to see Iceland be better than it was. I still have a feeling for the United States, although I feel the United States is beyond my control at this point, because it's like when Congress people are saying the most asinine things, I just like, wow, man. And I'm not even talking about just Trump Republicans or Republicans. I'm talking about some Democrats too. I mean, just some really non-thinking things.
They can all be shades of gray and stupidity.
Yes.
I mean,
I never say, oh, right wing is this or left wing is that, because I think a lot of people who consider themselves right wing, they have good points, and they need to be listened to. They need to be observed. But I think the left side also has great points that need to be listened to and observed. The problem is we always think of the extremes, like the very extremes, and that's not where I think everybody is. You go to extremes because something's happened to you bad in life. I think, if you're a left wing and you're way left wing, like everything needs to be free. Well, it's not, that'd be nice, but we're not, in Star Trek. Everything's not really going to be free.
Well, I will say, like you said, first of all, I think the term, unskilled labor?
Yes.
I think this is like capitalism gaslighting people.
Yes.
I think it's BS, because every unskilled job that I've ever had requires a skill. Patience, some kind of time management that, the person who's yelling at you in the driveway at McDonald's does not have. And they say, your job is so easy, why can't you just do this? And I'm sure if you put them in there for training, they'd be like, yeah, this is too much. I don't like this. And it's like, well, you have to like it. This is this unskilled job you were talking about that's so easy. So come and do it. Give it the program. I think that's BS. This is a lie that's meant so people can be paid the bare minimum.
Yes.
That, once again, you have someone else to look down on and go, you didn't go to college. You didn't do the right thing. Most people who are in these jobs usually have some degree that they're working on or already have. It's a shame that people who have doctorates that teach preschool and are still homeless, like in America. This is happening to people. It's ridiculous. Insane. So I think that's complete BS. As you were talking about the Woman King, the movie, and how people bring up they were a part of slavery. There was slavery. I wrote an entire paper about this. This is one thing I did do in college.
Okay.
I wrote an entire paper about this because I had a professor who's from he's from Mali, and he hates French people. And I remember this is so funny. He was like, whenever I'm at these, university parties, whatever, and I meet a French person, I do not speak French. I tell him I don't know a lick of French. I don't care. He's like, I don't like them. And of course, it's because they were a country that was colonized. So French is one of his he had his native language, and then he had French and then English. So he's like, I hate them. I thought this was hilarious and amazing that a professor was also like, no, I'm not playing this game. So slavery, it was a part of a lot of African countries and cultures. It was just different than chattel slavery, which is what we know in the US and in the Caribbean. It was much different. So there were, even in Ghana, people had slaves.
Yeah.
But when they were giving slaves to the Europeans, they didn't know that it was a different kind of slavery than what was had in Africa.
The slavery in Africa, I hate to interrupt you, but if I'm correct, was they didn't strip them of their
each culture had their different kinds. That's the problem. There's also different kinds. The one I mainly researched on, they had, you could be a slave, but you could leave. You could essentially have generations out of slavery. So our daughter would, our daughter, Jesus, your daughter, because we don't have a kid. I shouldn't say that. Don't need this misconstrued.
This is the internet. See, I knew they were together.
So like your daughter, if you were a slave and you had a kid, your grandkid would no longer be in slavery. And this was a term called breaking the pot. So there was you, your daughter, and then her daughter, and that broke the pot.
Okay.
So they were no longer in slavery. But also, as a slave, unlike in the U.S., you could get married. You also had some rights. This was not a point of you were no longer a human. You were like a chair, and you do what I make you do. You can't get married. As we know, in chattel slavery, you were a piece of property. This is why Black people often got married in secret, because how do a broom and a chair get married? They do not.
Yes.
So slavery in African countries was much different than what we know as chattel slavery. So yes, there were kingdoms in Africa that did participate in the slave trade, but they did not know chattel slavery was the same, was not the same as what they were doing.
We really should do a show on that, because that gets pretty deep.
It does.
But it's economic systems of looking down on and being in control of, which in the United States, like I said, the beginning of slavery was there were people working the land. Those people were not African, as I remember. There was some Indian. And then it was like the king wanted more to come out of that country. How do we do this? And there was books and science written to support. Some people are just less than.
And that's another problem. The people that are in power, they get to write the books on history. A lot of Black Americans, we do not know the history of ourselves, our ancestors. My family, all of our history is oral. We were having a discussion about this. We need to get something on paper, because we have now we no longer have family land that we had in the South. Before that, we don't really know where we came from. This is something that a lot of Black people, we don't have these, a lot of family heirlooms in history and book and photographs.
And what again, I want to tie this into the economic systems, because how they affect us all, regardless. What was interesting to me is there were Irish indentured servants in the States. Indians were. Some of them were they were tried to be indoctrinated into schools. It was just a dirty mess of the founding of the United States. But again, coming back to systems of oppression controlled by a small few. And the United States, we rebelled against the king because there was taxation without representation. There were all kinds of real crazy laws, like they could throw a soldier in your house and you'd have to keep a soldier in your house regardless of whatever your position on things were. So there was a rebellion against that. But it seems to me, in a broad sweep sense, that it's the same thing. It's almost coming to the same thing. There's a lot of surveillance going on. There's a lot of misinformation. The newspapers are bought usually by those who have a vested interest in controlling the outcomes of the news. People are generally working so much that they don't have time to get into the gray. So it's one side or the other, and that just keeps things dumb and nothing gets done. And I also am confused about the different political parties in Iceland, because it's like fracturing it so much. And I understand it has to be a coalition for things to work. I wish the United States had more than two, because they seem to be the two sides of the same coin.
So do the names really mean anything? I don't think the names mean anything, because in both parties, like you said, some people make good points. And then some people make points where you're like, where did this come from? Like the Jewish slavery thing. It just doesn't make sense. And like I was saying, I know where they are. They're in the money. Where are the committees? Where are the people that every 4 or 5 years check, okay, what are we actually doing with this? Is this going anywhere? Is it helpful? Can we use this? Is it harming us? How are these processes working? And like I said, they're in the money. But I think it's never going to be about bettering the people. It's always about there being a Black and a white, and actually none of them are, I think, for you. They're about breadcrumbing you to vote for them,
right?
And then once you're up, and it's like, I've seen people voted for, and they're like, what the fuck? This is not the same person that ran in office.
Well, that was same. That was what I was saying about the Trump and Obama thing. That's exactly the same thing. That's why people, they were like, we tried this for 2 consecutive terms, and the banks are still as powerful as they ever were. Our wages still haven't gone up. There's been nothing, like all these tax breaks. One of the messed up things that Obama did was he signed into law permanent a tax break that Bush had signed to be temporary. It's like, all right, again, they built rockets for fun to go to space. It's like, dude, they didn't need the tax break. You know who needed the tax break? Single mothers, low-income people, working class people who want to send their kids to college. And all these things, if the people have money, helps business. But if business doesn't need to be helped because they're just siphoning the money from taxes, it doesn't make businesses better. It doesn't help consumers at all. It doesn't do anything to uphold the government by providing the funds for infrastructure. These things are like, this is not hard. This is not hard to understand. These are facts, and when the government decides to negate its responsibility to the people, which is why government exists, not to promote businesses in a capitalistic system do not need, if they are a good business, the help of the government. It's not what capitalism is. Capitalism doesn't rely on the help of the government.
It does now.
But now it does. So you don't really get good business if they don't care where their money, if their money is not dependent on their performance. Their money is not dependent on their performance. They're getting kickbacks and tax breaks and everything else, and they're not paying into a system that the workers who ask for a wage increase are.
This is why they don't care if you're doing okay or not, because they're going to be fine.
Exactly.
And we had this discussion.
So how long does that continue?
So we had this discussion about during COVID in the U.S., we got stimulus checks. The first one was what, 2000? Yeah. I think the first one was 2000. And people, I think my mom was talking about, who were like, oh, we get this money. First of all, we all know $2,000 is nothing. And then to add on top of that, it wasn't 2,000 free dollars. It was borrowed from your taxes of the following year. So another thing was people, of course, had to find this out, like, I guess, the hard way. And why did people not know that? Because there's a lot of political jargon and red tape that you, as a working person, I heard, well, I'm trying to look for money right now. I get $2,000. Great. Okay. What is that going to go to? Well, okay, I have this for the kids. And then, but okay, the card. No, okay, that can hold off. This is what I heard. Next year, when it's time to do your tax returns, I'm supposed to get $8,000. Great. You only get $6,000. Well, why is that? Oh, that's because you got a stimulus check and they took their money back. And it's like, so you didn't actually stimulate anything. You let me borrow 2,000 of my own dollars.
Yes.
So this is to make it worse, if they gave you 2,000 and you only got, let's say, 1,000 you're supposed to get back, you now owe the money.
Well, that's the thing. It's in summation, I think the education of the population is really at issue, and we break down on extreme sides when we really, to solve issues, need to come to the middle. I think the system as it stands is on the verge of collapse and breaking again, and the blame always seems to go to the bottom, and it's like, you have broken the foundation of the United States. Iceland seems to be next. Those who are supporting the system, the people, where does the government prioritize? Is it in their healthcare, education, the things that will feed back into the society to make it strong, to make it healthy? Or is it going to a greed model of just a shiny object with no foundation, a beautiful outside, rotten in the core? And, we see breakdowns in healthcare, infrastructure, and at the same time, record numbers of people have been coming into this country. Well, does that help the citizens of this country? These record numbers, is the explosion in this tourism boom industry doing anything positive for the general population? I hazard to say, I don't think so. I see tons and tons of construction. But I also see roads that need repair. And I also see people can't afford daycare and things of this nature. And I mean, these are foundational things. Do we put money into the foundation so we have a strong foundation to build on? Or do we continue to take out of that foundation and weaken it to the point where, yeah, you might have glittering stuff at the top, but it's all going to eventually collapse because you've corrupted the foundation. That is science. That is facts 101. And that's where I'm going to leave it. This day, Saturday, what is it? The 23rd.
It's the 24th.
I always wanted that official news.
It's the 24th.
Oh, okay. Saturday, the 24th of 2022. This has been this has been work in progress.
A mess. And to add on to what you were saying, I think people not only need to be educated, they need to be informed about the systems that they live in. Because I think a lot of people are educated. And unfortunately, you can still be as dumb as a box of rocks. Yeah, this does not mean to say like, if you get a degree, you're still useless. I think you can be educated and still be very uninformed.
Yeah.
I think that needs to happen across all systems, Iceland, US, wherever you are. Being educated is no longer enough.
No. But there's a thing about common sense. I grew up in a multicultural neighborhood with immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
And learned a hell of a lot. And they all worked hard and they all respected everybody. They didn't care. We didn't really talk much about politics. Everybody had a Republican or Democrat. They all had a basic respect for the dignity of each other. And that's the kind of people I grew up around, with Irish background, from the Philippines. And what I basically found, people are just the same. People just want the same things. There's no different thing. The weird thing to me is when people think that because you look different or dress different or something like this, or because you're male or female, somehow you don't want the same things. No, everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to just, chill life,
And while Jeffrey is on that note, I will say we will hold all these wonderful ideas of multicultural backgrounds for next episode. Thank you for joining us today.
And I would like to thank Loivi for
we want to thank Sam Stoden.
We want to do that
for hosting our show.
Freedom of speech.
And yes, and I think we should definitely plug them right now. Samstoden.is or samstoden.is.
Mm-hmm.
People can go there and check out all the amazing things, all the shows that they host, and donate.
Some very good shows. Red
Table
is very informative. To hear things that you might not otherwise hear. Some discussions that I think need to be heard. And also, if you are English speaking or whatever, a good chance to hear some Icelandic talk the way it should be. Mm-hmm. Yes, I also like to thank Boy for the technical setup and all the things that have gone on here. It's really nice to
all the improvements.
Yes, very nice, very nice. And with that, we will say adieu. No, we can't say that. We say bless, because adieu is French.
We should say bye, because I gotta speak one colonizer's language. I'm sorry.
I don't even know what the non-colonized language would be.
In tree, I don't know, because that's when you see how colonization has really fucked us up.
Okay.
We're just gonna end this episode because the mental damage.
The mental damage.
Yes.
Hey, I resemble that remark. Now, thank you very much, and we will see you till next time.
Goodbye.